Hey guys, Primal Chaos here, and I'm just slipping this bit in because as you can see right now, there, I'm editing the video for this Unleash the Archers video, and unfortunately there was a bit of a mishap, and when I recorded my reaction, the preview video in the corner didn't record, so that was all my fault. I'll take credit for that one. But what it basically means is I'm just going to put a still frame in there for now, but the problem is I tried editing the video back into it, but because I move around in time so much, it's just impossible to match the video with what's happening in the reaction. So I'm just going to do it this way. Everything I say about the music still stands. There just might be some points where I reference the video and you won't be able to see what I'm talking about, unfortunately. But apologies for that. We'll get it right on the next one. And yeah, check it out. This is the reaction. Hey everybody, Primal Chaos here. Welcome to the channel. And look, someone in the comments mentioned that it's been almost a month since my last Unleash the Archers video. So we're going to rectify that today. Now, this one's an old one. It's from Demons of the Astro Waste 2011 album by Unleash the Archers. And it's called General of the Dark Army. Now, I'm assuming this is going to be... I've had a quick scan through the lyrics. I think it's going to be pretty straightforward fantasy metal. But that's what I'm here for, man. Unleash the Archers. If you want that sort of thing, they're the guys who are holding the torch mightily aloft, and they're not letting that down at all. So, you know, we're gonna dive into this. I'm expecting to see a lot of shredding. That's what these guys do really well. And I don't know. This would be interesting because I know these guys are known for doing the odd sort of concept album. Be interested to see if this is from that. But let's take a look. What do I know? We'll find out. Find out right now. Here we go. Come on. All right, wow. Okay, so I'll jump back a little bit and grab that, I guess it's a chorus again. But what's interesting, though, is I guess what I've heard from the more recent Unleash the Archers is a very specific sound. And this sort of is a little bit sort of different. It's still fantasy metal, but it's probably more specifically fantasy metal, if that makes sense. And what's interesting, now this is from 2011. I'm not sure. I know that they've had a few band members come and go. Obviously, Britney's still there, and I recognize one or two of the other guys, but I don't know the band well enough to spot who's not supposed to be there based on the current lineup. But it's really interesting that like, I know that at least Britney's influences are things like Queensryche and Iron Maiden, but what I'm sensing with the band and the music they're doing is much more akin to things like Manowar or Judas Priest and things like that, particularly the way that they're dressed as well, which I think is pretty cool. It's a very diverse range of influences, obviously all within metal, but they definitely had a flavor. They definitely know what they wanted to do, and they were doing it, and they're doing it very successfully. Now, the person who recommended this to me in the comments suggested that some of the production may not be as sharp as it is now, like as far as, you know, I mean, that's like any band. You start with their early works, and technically the production should get better over time. Not always, but it should. And while this is a great sounding recording, it really is, I'd love to hear this if it was remixed and remastered today with just bigger, fatter drum sounds and sort of a little bit more sort of put together so that it's got a lot of punch. Because it's a little, rather when it should be, you know. But, you know, I'm really digging it. The playing is spectacular, as I expected. The lead sound on that intro part, we're at 237, the lead tone right here is freaking amazing. It's really cool. It just screams. There's so much reverb and stuff like that in this section, but it still sounds kind of pristine, which is nice. This high note at the end. It's funny because it's sort of like when I see video like this, it reminds me of a really old movie called Lady Hawk, which is a great 80s film. If you haven't seen it, you should check it out. But I picture like a falcon flying over exactly these kind of mountains and then make that sort of kind of whistle noise. You know, that's the sound of that guitar lead, and I'm sure that's not an accident. It really does sound like a bald eagle or a falcon or something flying over, you know, a glacial lake or something, and I just think that's fantastic. Now let's go back to where we were, somewhere around here. But I like the narrative of the story. You know, it's the couple running from the mighty sort of night warrior who's obviously coming to take this guy down. But yeah, like, it's so far so good. It's pretty cool. Okay, if you were wondering, I mean, I know all you guys know how great a singer Britney is, but if you're wondering what the benefit of her coming from choir and having a great range too, I know she's sung alto and she's probably more of a mezzo or something, or in the lower register of like female voices, but she has an intense mix that takes her way up into the stratosphere as far as high notes go. In fact, I would suggest probably unnaturally high for her range. It allows her to do things like this. If you listen to her vocals through this whole part, she's got harmonized layers, and the sort of like what we call the tonic, or the main original note of the melody, is sort of underpinned by lower notes that you would normally expect a male counterpart to sing a lot of the times. Not always, but sometimes you'll hear like the guitar player's voice underneath, sort of thickening and doubling out the lead vocal. But in this case, because she has such an extended range, she can do that. And the way that she's so locked into her pitch and her timing means that it sounds almost synthetic. It sounds so beautifully harmonized that it sounds like a single voice, which is kind of the trick when you want to thicken something up by double tracking or layering vocals, you kind of want it to sound like one voice, but just really thick. And that's the magic of this. She manages to do it flawlessly. She's like a singing robot. Everything's perfectly locked together. So she's like, she's got like that melody, but there's also like in there as well. That's the high harmony, and I suspect there's also I think there's an octave lower on that harmony as well, or something lower. It's really hard to tell because the voice merges so beautifully together. It's hard to separate them. Come on. Holy shit. Man, did not see that coming at the end. Woo. Alright, there's a lot to talk about with that one. Hang around after the break and I'll give you a summary. Hey guys, this video is made possible by Enchroma. 1 in 6 guys and 1 in 200 women are colorblind, and if that happens to be you, there's something you can do about it. Click the link in the description, it'll take you to Enchroma's website where you can get a free eye test. And while you're there, maybe pick up some corrective lenses. They've got styles to suit everybody and a 60-day money-back guarantee, so you got really nothing to lose. And while you're there, use the code CHAOS in checkout to get 10% off. Tell them Primal Chaos sent you. Alright, so, man, there's a lot going on there. What I loved about it is towards the end of the song, it became clear to me what this was, and it's a great sort of performance song. Like, it's designed to be played for a crowd because there's that call and response where she's singing a cappella. There's also some sort of chanting sort of moments and things like that, which you know that'll get a crowd fired up and stuff like that. And I love it when bands do that. I love when they have the foresight to think, how is this going to rock a stadium, you know? And that sort of becomes pretty obvious towards the end. Another thing that I love about this band, as far as from a versatility standpoint, is you couldn't really see it in the clip how they manage it, but I've heard in the past that the two guys who are typically doing like the harsh vocals have different styles. So you've got, it seems like the taller guy, unfortunately I don't know their names yet, and it's even more confusing because there's a bunch of band members that have come and gone. But they, you know, the taller guy seems to do more of like the guttural sort of growls and stuff like that. And the other guy was doing more of the, what I like to call the goblin scream sort of bits, like wow sort of things, as opposed to like a, you know, and having that versatility across 3 members of the band, like you've got Brittany with her clean singing, and then you've got 2 separate types of harsh vocal, you can use them together. Whereas, you know, there's plenty of bands out there that have a singer that can do many different styles, or like, you know, bands like Ginger, or I guess Will Ramos is a good example. He's like every member of this band in one, but he can only sing one voice at a time, you know. So you can have live on stage, you can have layered parts with these guys, as opposed to, you know, like a lot of times with harsh vocals in the studio, they'll layer like a deep growl with a higher pitched scream pulled back in the mix with maybe some reverb on it, so it gives that brightness to the sound. And then sometimes they'll do a lower, if they can, even lower than just a normal fry scream underneath, you know. So you can have like 3 or 4 layers of vocals to make something sound specifically massive. You know, sometimes they'll even use pitch correction, which I know is a swear word when you're talking about gutturals, but I tell you, I hear like, you know, pitch lowering and stuff like that fairly often. But it's there for effect. You know, it's trying to give the impression of what you would see if you were standing in front of them with 10,000 people behind you, and through a giant PA system, like a sounds like a mighty gorilla rather than just some guy going into a microphone. And so when you're in the studio and everything sounds pristine and clear, sometimes you don't get that effect. So they'll manipulate things and layer things to give the impression of something. You know, it's hard to make something stand out when the rest of the song is you screaming into a mic. Where do you go from there? If you want a particular growl to sort of pop out from the mix, there's only 2 things you can do. You can take away everything behind it, so it's just a solo standalone sound, or you can manipulate it to make it sound bigger. And that's what you do. So in this case, these guys can be live on stage. Brittany can be singing a note, and then guy 1 can be under there, and guy 2 can be over the top. And so you have the recorded album sound live on stage. You don't have to use backing tracks and things like that. I think that's particularly useful, you know. While we give all the credit in the world to singers who can naturally produce a bunch of different tones and sounds and effects with their voices, what use are they if they can only do one at a time? You know, so that's actually really cool that they're structured that way. I love that these guys are holding the torch aloft, like I said, for traditional like D&D style nerd geek fantasy metal, because, you know, there's not, I mean, I'm sure there's millions of bands out there, but there's very few that sort of somehow managed to get the crossover to be liked by a bunch of people outside of that sort of ilk, right? One of my favorite bands is Rhapsody, or Rhapsody of Fire. when I say favorite, I don't know all of their material, I don't know all their albums, but every time I hear them, I'm stoked, right? I just get super excited about their galloping across the plains with a flaming sword kind of attitude. And these guys definitely have that same sort of flavor. And so, you know, I'll listen to this stuff and it'll just make me just want to fire up. That's the effect that it has. And these guys are particularly good at doing that. More so, I would say lately, because like anyone, they've sort of compressed themselves down to a distillation of what makes them great, and they know what to put in and what to take out. If I had to be critical of this song, I feel like it's probably a little bit longer than it needs to be. But that's not up to me to decide, right? That's the band's choice. But I feel like the callback to the chorus happens so frequently that it starts to become a little bit mundane, right? And so I think that's the kind of thing that wouldn't happen with 2022 Unleash the Archers. I think they'd be a little bit more cognizant of their compositions and stuff like that. That said, did I feel like that was detrimental to the song? No, I feel like this was just a great song on its own, standalone. But it's kind of I feel like it's a little bit paint by numbers, whereas now they're just artists free painting on a canvas, right? And that shows a really great sense of maturity and evolution as artists. And that's why I like to check out some of this older stuff, because I mean, typically bands don't get worse over time. There's definitely times where a band will come up with a seminal album and then they'll decide they don't want to do that anymore and they'll take a hard left and the fans won't like it and things like that. But I'm talking about bands that stick to their guns over the long haul. They tend to just get better with time. And that's what I really like to see. I like to see, like, if I heard this in 2011, I would have been like, this is awesome, right? Where are these guys going to be in 10 years or whatever, you know? And now I know, because I heard, you know, the original, or the newer stuff first, and I can refer back to this stuff and go, this is great, but man, I can see the evolution of this band in real time, and it's really impressive, you know? And I think that comes from, you know, possibly, actually, you know what could have been helpful? I don't know the trajectory of their album releases, but being that they're doing sort of like the concept album thing they've done too that I'm aware of, maybe more, this could have even been from one. I was actually discussing this today with somebody about concept albums. We were talking about Operation Mindcrime by Queensryche, right? Funnily enough, being that Britney's a huge fan. And I was explaining him the storyline, which was super convoluted, and he was saying that he's not into concept albums because the lyrics don't typically mean too much to him. And from my perspective, I was like, you know what? Typically me too, but the interesting thing about a concept album is because you're writing songs to a predetermined theme, the songs have to sound a certain way. So what they do is they take the artist out of their comfort zone and force them to write in styles they normally wouldn't. Like, for example, Queensryche Sweet Sister Mary, whatever, yeah, is that what it's called? Yeah. It has like a whole bunch of like Latin chanting in it, you know, like Dominum, you know, all those sort of like choral vocals and stuff that I'm sure Queensryche wouldn't have put in any song unless there was something specifically, you know, Catholic Church about the song, right? And they'll often have big passages of just musical interludes that you wouldn't put in a song that you just want to be a straight up rock song and things like that. And I feel like from Unleash the Archers' perspective, probably working through a couple of concept albums has honed their ability to really place just more interesting pieces into the puzzle, because they're used to now working to a format of like, okay, this song is where X or Y happens and someone has to do this, and therefore it has to have a dramatic passage in the middle, and it also has to start aggressively but maybe end on a soft, somber tone. You're sort of restricted by those patterns, and sometimes restrictions can lead to more intense creativity, you know? And maybe that's what I'm hearing. Like, the band themselves don't sound different. I'm not listening to them going, wow, Britney's voice has really improved. She sounds the same to me. If anything, I think she's probably more capable now of making choices where her amazing range is more highlighted and things like that, rather than just singing some strong melodies. She's going, I'm going to sing a strong melody, but I'm going to save this part for the apex of the song and things like that. You know, the guitar players are phenomenal. They're just great shreddy sort of, again, fantasy metal guitar playing. The drums are great. There's double kicks where they should be. There's great creative fills and all that sort of stuff. And again, I love the vocal interactions and things like that as well. I just think they're just now, they were painting with, a good analogy would be they used to be drawing with colored pencils and they've graduated to oil paints. You know what I mean? That's the kind of vibe I get from my perspective. And yeah, this was really good. I'm glad I checked this one out. I probably wouldn't have stumbled upon it just by scrolling. So this is why you guys giving me ideas about like trajectories of where I should go next is so important, because you guys know the discography, you know the catalog, and so you guys pointing me in the right direction is what makes this channel what it is, and it's certainly more interesting. So thanks again for the recommendations. Keep that coming. Of course, if you feel like I've brightened your day at all with this react analysis, which is a new word that I came across in the chat the other day and I thought was kind of poignant. Yeah, I'll leave a donation link in the description. Just buy me a coffee. I appreciate that. It's a great way to support the channel. And if not, just like, share, subscribe, hit the bell, all those things. It's always cool to see people coming back to the channel and enjoying the conversation, finding new bands, finding things outside their comfort zone, because the channel's become pretty diverse as far as what I react to now. So I'm getting so many more comments now saying, wow, I never would have listened to this band. I'm glad you brought them up. And I'm like, that's exactly why I'm here. So thanks again. I appreciate you guys 100%, and I'll catch you on the next one.